Welcome, everyone. I've been with ICT for 6 months now, and I have to say it's a real privilege to work with so many talented people globally, in the UK, Europe, Far East, the US, and hopefully working with you in the future. There's a common strain with the tutors at ICA and ICT. And that common strain is that they really love what they do, and it's remarkable. I've sat in on many, many different tutors, most of these at the front here, and they're really passionate. In my previous lives, I've done a lot of training and sat in on many, many training sessions, and I've been falling asleep. But what's really good about this is that when these people are so passionate, that goes on to you. So, why are you here? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? You're here for skills development. You may be looking for a move. There are many, many reasons: curiosity, career advancement. For me, compliance is the career of choice. Prior to compliance, I was a lawyer, I was an engineer, I worked in aerospace, I worked in telcos, and I remember in about 2003, I was working in financial crime for France Telecom, and I had the responsibility of training 200,000 people in the area of fraud across 45 jurisdictions. And I was sitting in the CFO's office of a $45 billion turnover company, and I had to convince her to make compliance sexy. And I did, and that was then when compliance was just a tick box exercise. And then more recently, I've moved into academia. I've taught at Bristol Law School in financial crime and business. And all of these industries are taking compliance really seriously. I remember talking to Jonathan Fisher, QC. Now, some of you may know him. He was instrumental in advising the government when the libel scandal broke. And he gave a talk at Bristol Law School. And we were chatting. And at the time, he was instrumenting the reckless management offence for bankers who cause their banks to fail. Now, this is now enshrined in law. All of us are involved in these events which are happening on a global level. You would have seen the libel scandal. Tom Hayes got convicted for fraud for 14 years. Some may think it was harsh, but don't forget, he was on $2 million a year. The interesting thing about that is that he's appealing his sentence just yesterday, so watch out for that one. And these are all the things that we cover. So why is compliance a good industry to get into now? Well, we've heard Bill and other people talk about the industry needing more people. So I've just got a few slides to show you. So just in banking alone, the litigation costs have cost $260 billion, with $60 billion more to come. And that's just in banking. You've got other industries like aerospace. Rolls-Royce bribery case still hasn't come to any conclusion yet. The regulation is really complex. On the one hand, you've got the regulators saying we're going to increase regulation. We're talking about the senior manager regime. We're talking about the reckless management offence, which is jail time for banking staff. On the other hand, we've got George Osborne and Sajid Javid talking about deregulating. Where do we stand? It's quite complex. David Cameron talking about making companies more transparent so that the beneficial ownership can be more revealed to stop corrupt illicit payments coming through the UK system. What this means is that, yes, there may be more or less regulation, there's more complication, but for compliance professionals, what that means is that there's more demand for people like us. And lastly, I think this is just a snapshot of what I picked up this morning from a report from Barclays Simpson. These are the jobs currently advertised. No, these are the jobs currently posted. Now, these are at the high end, but you can see where it's going. So I'd like to leave you with that and introduce Jonathan Bowdler, UK Head of GRC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Viri. So far we've done passion, sex, and just done the money. Who'd have thought it in a compliance presentation, hey? Okay, what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit around the governance, risk, and compliance courses that we offer, and why it's such a great time to be involved in this part of the industry, and what we can do for you. Okay, so let me start off. Why is it so exciting? No, it wasn't Becca, it was Chad, mentioned change because a question came from the floor. Change or BAU? In our area, BAU is change. Full stop. You are risk managers, you are change managers, as well as having to be experts in your field. If there was no change, we'd all be out of a job. So welcome it, embrace it. The problem is, of course, we have to encourage our business to see change as a positive, as a good thing. And the real challenge of those working in the GRC area is showing the business the value that we bring to them. But the constant change gives us constant opportunity. The next thing is the way in which our role has changed. Now, I started in compliance in 2001, and I was the business prevention unit, and I was sat on my own, and people saw me coming and hid, or sudden deviation into another office or another corridor. Now, they come and find you. They need you. Without you and without your advice and your guidance, they cannot achieve their objectives. So the role of compliance, the way it is viewed, has considerably improved, but so therefore have the demands. The demands on those people working in those roles to understand their business and to be able to give good advice so that the business can achieve its objectives. The business doesn't exist to be compliant. That's not the role of a business. The role of a business is to grow, whether it's to make money for its shareholders or whatever its strategic objective might be. It's not to be compliant, but our role is to help them achieve those objectives within a heavily regulated industry. And as the regulation either increases or becomes more complex, then our role becomes more important for the business achieving those objectives. I love the fact that we have moved away from a more technical tick box approach, or even just a simple, this is the rule, we must follow it, how can we follow it? Or if you want to take the legal advice, how can we get around it? Okay, that doesn't work anymore, that doesn't wash. It's now about, well, how are we behaving? How are we arriving at the decisions we arrive at? There's a clue in the name of the main regulator. It's not called the Financial Conduct Authority accidentally. Conduct is simply another word for behavior. So this focus on behavior and ethics has to be embraced. It's not going to go away. The fact that our roles have developed into this much more influential position within a firm, and you might be on the board, you might be reporting to the board, certainly more visible, and certainly have more authority than you used to have, means that we can actually make a difference in our businesses. Now, if you talk to some of the consultants here, sat in the front row, or other consultants in the business, they'll be talking, and they're saying, well, we've got to be cutting edge when it comes to regulatory compliance. How can compliance help your firm gain an advantage, gain a competitive edge? Why not? Becca did allude to the fact that we do share ideas in our areas, whether it be financial crime, ALM, or compliance, and of course we'll share best practice, but don't forget, whoever does it best has an advantage for their business. If you're all in a heavily regulated arena, then whoever does the regulatory risk management best gives an advantage to their firm. I wrote my master's dissertation on obtaining competitive advantage from compliance in financial services firms in the UK. And yes, it was as dull as it sounds. But I did that in 2003. It was there from day one. And gradually, the industry has caught up with that. And at ICA, when I joined there 7.5 years ago, we've always had that at the core of our work. How can you use regulatory compliance for the benefit of your organization, as well as, of course, for you in your career? And then finally, the career structure itself, brilliant. Entry level to the board. What more could you possibly want? And if you say, well, hang on, what about a bit of variety? How many of you who have worked in a compliance or regulated role have ever done the same job for more than about 12 months? The constant change is always there. So you can even have the same job title for 2 or 3 years, but you won't be doing the same job. So again, for those people that enjoy change, enjoy influence, then compliance is a career to go for. What's happening at the moment? Well, these are just some examples. The whole thing about regaining the trust of the industry through cultural change. But you say it's a current hot topic, or rather I say it's a current hot topic. It takes 5 to 10 years to change culture, so that's not going to go away. The governance and accountability through the new senior managers regime. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the moment. Now, there are ways in which you can influence behaviour at senior manager level. Some of them are positive, encouraging them, showing them the benefits of compliance, which is my favourite phrase of all, the benefits of compliance. But if you need to get the big stick out, the senior management regime is a very big stick. And so we've got to understand what that means to our organisations, what it means to the senior management, what it means, of course, to the senior compliance or risk professionals, because you will be captured by the senior management regime. A couple of things around how the regulator, their power and influence is changing. Viri just made a very good comment. And we look at the evolution of financial services. It is intrinsically linked to political change. Every time we change government in this country, they change the regulatory structure. We look at that, we try and understand why that is the case. So we do a little bit of politics, the socio-economic development in the country, and how that affects the regulatory environment. And with now a Conservative government, if you like, off the leash of the coalition, we are seeing change again. Martin Wheatley didn't want to resign. That is political interference, or political influence, shall we say. The new structure of the PRA. That, again, is a political decision. So understanding this just makes the whole thing really interesting. And then, of course, is irregulation, is the scope going to increase? Is it going to shrink? Is it going to become more principles and ethics-based? Or are we going to see a return to some more rules-based in certain areas? The thing is, you always have a complete mix, and you have to understand what is happening at any one time. And I thought I'd put the money on there just in case it hadn't come up, because we all like talking about money, don't we? But remuneration changes behaviour. And don't forget, behaviour is what it's all about now, certainly at senior management level. So I said I'd mention the senior management's regime in a little more detail. It's probably a little bit of scaremongering to say you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. But it's a nice phrase, and let's face it, scaremongering is something we have to do every now and again to get people's attention. But the detail behind it, the understanding of accountability at senior management level, is incredibly important. You've got to make sure your staff understand this. Certainly, anybody who's captured by the senior management regime, absolutely critical they understand their responsibilities. But now we have the 2 new levels below it. The certification regime for material risk takers, which has to follow the remuneration code, and the new conduct rules that affect everybody. And we're only 8 months away from the beginning of this, and then with another year of transformation before everything comes on stream. So, fantastic hot topic, and if you do any of our qualifications, particularly the GRC or the compliance, regulatory compliance qualifications, we will be talking a lot about the senior management's regime. And not just about how do you comply with it, how do you use it? How can you utilize this as an opportunity within your business? Okay, I just want to finish off with a couple of points on what we cover within the course. Within the course, we start off with basic understanding. And I say basic understanding because it's amazing how many people who work in compliance in the UK can't tell me what the objectives of the regulator are. Some can, some can't. And then I say, what are the 11 principles of the FCA? And in 7.5 years, how many people do you think have been able to tell me the 11 principles of the FCA without looking them up? Let's have a guess. Come on, wakey, wakey. What have you got to do, shout out a number? Very good, nearly 0. It was 1, and that was 6 months ago. I think that is astonishing. How can you work in the regulatory regime without understanding some of these key fundamental basics? How many enforcement cases have there been in the UK that have not involved a principal breach since 2007? Shout out the same number. 0. Okay? If you comply with the principles, you do not go into enforcement action. 10 years of experience. And yet people can't tell us what they are. So we do some of the technical pieces. We do look at some of the rules. But we then focus on implementation. We focus on how you can make GRC, governance, risk and compliance, effective in the success of your business. So the first line in the sand might be no breaches, but you can have no breaches by throwing money at it. You don't want to throw money at it, you want to do it effectively. You want to do it in a way that helps your organization achieve its objectives. We look at how you use the resources at your disposal effectively, both the internal resources, that's usually your staff, maybe some IT, maybe the rest of the business, and we look at external resources, like consultancy firms, like regulators themselves, and also the media and social media. All of these things come into the bigger picture of risk management. And we also then take a view on how we implement this knowledge. So what are you going to do in your organization? In our workshops, we design compliance functions. We look at risk management frameworks, and we ask you to apply it to your own business and your own firm. The assessments also allow you to take the knowledge and apply it to your own business, your own sector. So there's a lot you can do to customize the course for your own area of interest and your own firms. And at the end of the course, you will come out with a certificate, which, although very pretty and very nice, is at the end of the day just a piece of paper. What's more important is you'll come out at the end of the course with stuff up here, knowledge, information, learning. And that is what you can then use to meet your own personal potential. You will learn things on this course, and it may only at the end of the course be a dozen things that stick. And those dozen things can make a real difference to your career going forward. You'll have to learn more than a dozen things to pass the exam, by the way. But all of that knowledge, all of that learning brings you to a point at the end of the course where, yes, you're qualified, but you also have more knowledge to be able to, first of all, do your own current role better and reach the next role and even the role after it. A lot of our training is about how you learn, how you develop your skills, and you can carry that forward for the next 10 years, as well, of course, of doing CPD. I've got a lovely couple of quotes here as well from delegates. We all get them, and to be honest with you, the reason I think we all enjoy our job so much is because how many of you at the end of every day, or at least the end of our teaching day, how many of you get people coming up and saying, really enjoyed today, thank you so much? We get it nearly every day we teach. It's brilliant. And we get it because people are enjoying themselves as they learn, and that's how we teach. Because people can see the link as well between what they're learning and what they do in the workplace. So, best form of checking out if this is the right course for you, find people who have done them before and ask them for an honest opinion. And they will give you an honest opinion, and I 90% guarantee you'll then sign up for the course. Okay, I've got about 5 minutes left, which is nice. So, any questions? Dazzled into silence. Thank you.
Hi there. Quick question between the diploma and the postgraduate diploma. I think for me, I think hopefully also for others, it'd be important to understand the differences between the two programs and how they work.
Sorry, between the diploma and?
Diploma and the postgraduate diploma.
And the postgraduate, yeah, absolutely. There are 4 levels. Very briefly, the certificate and the advanced certificate, we would say are regulatory compliance. Now, when you get to the diploma and the postgraduate, we're talking about governance, risk and compliance, because we're talking more about the management. The diploma is, as Becca sort of said, our sort of gold standard program we've been running since day one. Very experienced in it, and it tells you both how to do the job and how to influence others, how to convince the board that you need the resources, how to convince the other functions in the business need to listen to you, need to come to you, so you can manage regulatory risk in the business. And it's a very practical course in that it gives you 2 opportunities through assignments to apply that knowledge, plus the exam at the end. There's a lot of cutting-edge material in there because we base it on what is happening in the market as we go along. The postgraduate is for those people who have at least 10 years industry experience, at least 3 years at board level or just reporting into the board, and it's a little bit more around the strategic direction of governance, risk and compliance. There's perhaps a little bit more focus on the governance and risk side of things and managing regulatory risk in the business. You will have more people on that who aren't actually full-time compliance professionals. There'll be directors, maybe chief operating officers, chief financial operators, who want to understand how they can use compliance or work with compliance for the benefit of their business. So it's more strategic. We also have 8 guest speakers who are leaders in their field who deliver half-day masterclasses, and it's all done at a residential weekend. So the diploma is a little bit more practical. How do I do my job? How do I become a head of compliance? Or how do I be a really effective head of compliance? The postgraduate, a little bit more cutting edge. Where are things going? How do I use it strategically for the benefit of my business? I think. We are doing a session at the end of today, if you can hang around until the end of the day, or come back, where we will talk about the postgraduate specifically. Is that okay? Okay?